Good morning. Good morning. I am at home today. I'm not sick, but I'm at home today. So I'm going to read you the last few chapters of our book. I'm sitting outside because it's such a beautiful morning. So if you're at home, I hope that you get outside today. It is gorgeous out here. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 22 and we'll finish the book today. Remembering is just an invention of the mind. Spring has sprung, Freak says, and so are we. This is the day that school gets out, and we've been taking the long way home. By now, I've been carrying him around on my shoulders for almost a year. We call it walking high. And even if we haven't been going on any dangerous quests lately, so the fair Gwen won't have to throw a fit, Freak hasn't exactly given up on slaying dragons. The world is really and truly green all over, he says. Do you remember what it used to be like back in the Ice Age, when glaciers covered the earth and the saber-toothed tigers roamed the frozen night? No, I say. How could I remember that? I wasn't even born. Don't be a pinhead, he says. Remembering is just an invention of the mind. I go, what is that supposed to mean? It means if you want to, you can remember anything, whether it happened or not. Like, I remember what it was like in the Ice Age. I kept trying to invent stuff, the wheel, central heating, indoor plumbing, but the Neanderthals were happy with just a campfire and a fur coat. If you guess that Freak has been reading a book about the Ice Age, you're right. He's been seeing a saber-toothed tiger behind every bush, except that so far all of them have turned out to be stray cats. Or once, I think it was a skunk, and it's a good thing I can run fast or we'd have to soak in tomato juice, which is the only way to get rid of skunk stink. Inventing electricity would be tough, he says, without copper wire and magnets, but I could handle inventing a compass. All you would do is have to rub a needle. That way, everybody could head south and get away from the glaciers. First, you need to invent a time machine, I say, so you can go back and give all the cavemen a hard time about indoor plumbing. Freak goes, you don't need a time machine if you know how to remember, which is something I'll always remember him saying and trying to figure out. Freak's birthday is a couple of days after school gets out, and the fair Gwen has already made it clear that he is not getting a ride on the space station. 13 is supposed to be extra special, he says. The least you could do is get my name on the list, or how about a linear accelerator? Just a small one, so I can split a few atoms. The fair Gwen goes, I suppose this means you're going to be an obnoxious teenager. Sorry, there's a plane flying over. The deal is, this is really 2 birthdays for the price of one, because Freak the Mighty is almost a year old. Talk about a prodigy, Freak says. 1 year old and already he's on his way to the 9th grade. The fair Gwen just rolls her eyes when we talk like that. Freak says that we can't expect her to understand, because you can't really get what it means to be Freak the Mighty unless you are Freak the Mighty. Anyhow, the party is just a family affair. Freak isn't supposed to get overexcited, which is like saying the moon isn't supposed to go around the earth. Last year I got the ornithopter, he says. This year, why not a helicopter? A real one, though. You can't expect a teenager to play with toys. Why not a jet plane? The fair Gwen says. Cool, Freak says. A Learjet. What he's really getting, and I've been sworn to secrecy, is a new computer. The one he's been drooling over in his computer magazines. It comes with a modem, which means that if he has to stay home for some reason, he can go to school over the telephone. The idea is that I'd be there in the classroom with a matching computer. The only problem, I don't know anything about computers. You'll learn, the fair Gwen says. Kevin will teach you. But why would he have to stay home? I ask her. We're out in the kitchen and she and Graham are frosting a cake, and Freak is hanging out in the living room acting like he intends to have a party every day for the rest of his life. Maybe he won't have to stay home, the fair Gwen says, and she and Graham kind of lock eyes for a second, that secret code that mothers have. This is just in case, Max. I think maybe he's already guessed about the computer, I say. That's why he's jerking your chain about the space shuttle ride and Learjets. I'm not surprised, the fair Gwen says. You can't keep anything from Kevin. Freak hardly touches his supper. He says he's saving his appetite for the cake, and finally we're all done eating except for Grim, who keeps rubbing his belly and rolling his eyes and telling the fair Gwen what a genius she is with fresh peas and new potatoes and salmon, and he'll have just a smidgen more, thank you. Until finally, Grim clears her throat and smiles, and Grim has to apologize for being such a pig. The funny thing is, when they do bring the cake out, Freak asks me to flame out the candle while he makes a wish, and then he doesn't even touch his cake. He just kind of pushes it around. I figure he's so excited about getting the new computer that he's lost his appetite. Not that he's letting on that he doesn't feel good. He's acting just as wise and smart-mouthed as ever. I should have asked for earplugs, he says when we're done singing. You'd better check the glassware for cracks. Hush up, the fair Gwen says, or we'll give you another chorus. When she brings out the computer, he acts so surprised and happy. Maybe he really is surprised. Right away, he wants to turn it on and show off what a brain he is. And because it's his birthday, we all have to go sit there and admire him and go, amazing and fantastic, and Kevin, how did you do that? And so on and so on. He's showing Grim how to play 3D chess, and just watching that makes me dizzy. So after a while, I go out to the kitchen and help clean up, which is something I am good at. Maxwell never breaks a dish, Grandma is saying. He's very sure-handed for someone so large. We're almost done putting the stuff away, and Grim shouts from the other room. All he says is, Kevin! But we can tell right away something is wrong. We run in, and Freak is leaning back in his chair, making this wheezing sound, panting real fast, and his eyelids are flickering. He's having a seizure, Grim says. Call an ambulance. The fair Gwen is already on the phone. I run out in the street and start waving my arms up and down just so they'll know where to stop. I keep running back in the house to check on things, but the fair Gwen says there's nothing we can do except wait. Chapter 23. They won't let me visit him the first day, and Graham says I'll have to be patient and let the doctors do their business. But I can't stand just sitting around, so I decide to walk over to the hospital, which Grim says is miles and miles, but suit yourself. I know how to get there because Freak and I went yonder that way one day so he could show me the medical research building. It's not the same, though, without Freak along to turn the houses into castles and swimming pools into moats. All I keep thinking is what a jip it is to have to go to the hospital on your birthday. Finally, I get there and I see the fair Gwen's car in the visitor parking lot. But Grim says I should leave her alone and let her tend to her son. So I just go around the back of the medical research building and find this stupid little tree to sit under. I have that old ornithopter bird with me. I'm winding it up and flying it around, figuring maybe Freak will get a chance to look out the window and see it flittering by. That's my plan. And I'm under that puny tree messing with the bird until this guy mowing the lawn makes me move. So I wander around the front of the hospital, and that's where the fair Gwen finds me. Max, she says, and gives me this great big hug. Max, we've been looking for you all over. Kevin wants to see you. He's making quite a fuss about it, and Dr. Spivak says it's okay, but just for a few minutes. I'm sorry about that plane. It's very loud. So the fair Gwen takes me inside, and I figure we're heading for the medical research building. But instead, we go to the regular hospital. He's in the ICU, she says. So they're taking good care of him, I ask. They're doing their very best, Max. The ICU is this place where there are so many nurses, you can't hardly turn around without bumping into one, which is what I do as soon as we get there. Every patient gets a room alone, and there's all this electronic gear and that the fair Gwen calls telemetry, which means when Freak sneezes, the nurses know it before he can wipe his nose. I'm not scared at all until I actually go in his room and see how tiny he looks on his bed. They've got him sitting up with all these tubes going up his arms and up his nose, and Dr. Spivak is guarding him. She won't let me come too close. I thought no visitors was the best policy for now, Dr. Spivak says. But what Kevin wants, Kevin gets. Dr. Spivak is this small woman with short red hair and a real stern face. And it's like she's mad because Freak wants to see me, or because I'll break some of her precious equipment. That will be all, Freak says to her. You are dismissed. The thing is, his voice sounds funny. Not faint and weak, but kind of whistly. Only when I get closer do I see he's got this weird plastic button stuck in his neck. It's called a tracheotomy, he says, holding his finger against the button which stops the whistling noise. Standard procedure to facilitate breathing. Does it hurt? I ask. No way, he says. I think it's cool. Listen. Then he plays with the finger against the button, making his throat whistle a tune, which he says is a theme from Star Trek, although you can hardly recognize it. So when do you come home, I ask. Freak can't move much, the way they've got him set up in the bed, so he sort of shakes his eyes against his head. I'm not coming home, he says, not in my present manifestation. I go, what? The bionic unit is on red alert, he says. Tonight, they'll take me down for my special operation. The next time you see me, I will be new and improved. I'm scared, I say. Don't be a moron, he says. You're not the one having surgery. I still wish they wouldn't. Don't argue with me, he says. I have to lean in close to hear him because his voice is so small and whispery. He goes, if you argue with me, I'll get upset and they'll be able to tell on the telemetry. Then you'll be the one in trouble. So I just stand there like a lump and I don't say anything for a while. I put the ornithopter on the foot of the bed, but I don't think he notices. See the book on the table? He asks. I see it. Open it, he says. The book reminds me of the dictionary. The book reminds me of the dictionary he gave me for Christmas, except when I open it, all the pages are blank. That's for you, he says. I want you to fill it up with our adventures. Huh? I say. Write it down, dummy. I was going to do it, but it looks like I'll be busy getting used to my new bionic body. It'll probably take me weeks just learning how to walk with long legs. I put the book down. You're the one with the brain, I say. I'm the one with the long legs. Don't get me upset, he warns. I won't have the time, so you'll have to do it. Just write it all down like you're talking. Put in all the fun we've had, all the cool things we did. But you know I can't write, Kevin. It's all in your head, Max. Everything you remember. Just tell the story of Freak the Mighty. It's no big deal. I pick the book back up and I don't say anything more about how hopeless it is, me trying to write stuff down, because I don't want to set off the telemetry. He does that himself about a minute later when he starts to cough, and before I can say anything, the room is swarming with nurses and Dr. Spivak is telling me I have to get out. Out this second, young man, she says. Let us do our jobs. They let me wait outside the ICU with the fair Gwen, who was just standing at the window wringing her hands and not saying a word. Finally, they come out and say that he's okay. It was just a bad spell, and they have him stabilized. A while later, Graham comes to the hospital to drive me home. Nobody talks much at supper that night except for Grim, who opens his big mouth and says, "Poor Gwen looks like she's in terrible pain." I go, "Poor Gwen? She's not the one having the operation." Grim and Graham just look at each other like they can't believe I'm so dumb. And finally, Graham says, "Max, please make an effort to eat your vegetables." That night, I put the empty book in the pyramid box for safekeeping and for good luck. Chapter 24, The Return of Kicker. The deal is, I'm not supposed to bother anybody at the hospital. Yeah, right. Like me being there is going to screw something up. The way everybody is acting around here, you're supposed to shut up and not do anything but wait, which makes me crazy. So early the next morning, when Grim is still snoring loud enough to rattle the window panes, I get up and sneak out of the house. The way I figure, I can check on Freak and be back in time for breakfast. No harm done. It doesn't work out like that, to say the least. The sun is coming up over the mill pond and there's this spooky mist on the water. You can hear the frogs making a racket under the lily pads, and the mosquitoes sound like bullets whizzing by, and I kind of have to slap and run until I get clear of the smelly old pond. Moving fast, like the sun is chasing my heels, I'm running down the long, faint shadow that stretches out ahead that you can't ever catch up with. I'm thinking with my feet like the rest of me is still asleep. Not that I'm completely alone. There's this one guy, He's actually out cutting his lawn. He's got these headlights rigged to his riding mower, and he's wearing pajama pants, like it's normal. Everybody mows in pajama pants. When I get back to the hospital, the street lights are just starting to click off. The lobby is empty and there's nobody at the desk to tell me I can't be visiting patients at the crack of dawn. There are plenty of nurses in the ICU though, and they see me coming. This one woman runs right out from behind the telemetry station, and she's got her hands up to her mouth, and I'm pretty sure she's trying to shush me, even though I'm not making any noise. She's not telling me to be quiet though. She's saying, "Oh my goodness, you must be Maxwell," even though she's never seen me before in her life. I go, "Is Kevin back yet?" "Oh dear," she says. "Oh dear." "Is he going to be okay?" I ask. "Oh dear." She keeps saying, "Oh dear." Now more nurses are coming out of the ICU. One of them is the one I accidentally bumped into yesterday, and when she sees me, she says, "You better page Dr. Spivak." Kevin was her patient. That's when I notice that some of the nurses are crying and looking at me all strange. And then I just go nuts. I'm saying, "No way, no way." And this nurse is trying to throw a hug on me, and I push her away. Then I'm running down the hall, and it's like I'm Kicker again, ready to just blast anybody who dares to touch me. And I have to keep running. I'm skidding around the corners and bumping into walls, and no one can even touch me, even if they were brave enough to try. I just keep running and running until I get to these glass doors that say medical research. The doors are locked and it's dark inside. Behind me, people are shouting to call the guards, and I punch my hand right through the glass. I'm inside, skidding over broken glass through the dark, and I keep going until I get to another set of doors. No admittance. No glass this time. They're solid. I can't punch through, so I'm kicking and slamming into doors. And that's when all the hospital cops catch up with me. A bunch of them jump on me, and I keep going and running in circles like an accident of nature, until finally there are so many of them on me that I can't stand up anymore. They're putting handcuffs on my wrists and my ankles, and they're sitting on me going, "We'll have to medicate him." And this one cop says, "With what, an elephant gun?" That's how Dr. Spivak finds me, covered with cops. She has this worried face, leaning down. Her eyes are red and blurry, and she's saying, "I'm sorry, Max. We did our best. Better let me bandage up that hand. You're bleeding." "He believed you," I say. "You said you could give him a whole new body, and he believed you." "What are you talking about?" "The special operation," I say. "The bionics unit." Dr. Spivak makes the cops let me up and says that she'll be responsible, but they leave the handcuffs on me just in case. The cop who was talking about needing an elephant gun has the nightstick out like he's ready to bop me if I make a wrong move. Dr. Spivak sighs and says, "Somebody get me a coffee, please." Then she looks at me and says, "You better tell me all about it." So while she's bandaging up my hand, I tell her about how Freak has been coming to the medical research lab every few months to get tested. And that they were going to give him his new bionic body. And Dr. Spivak's face goes soft, and she nods to herself and says, "Well, that explains it." "It was all a lie, wasn't it?" I say. "You were just telling him so that he wouldn't be scared." "You know better than that, Maxwell. You couldn't lie to Kevin." I tried a little fib on him when he was a child, and I didn't think that he could handle the whole truth about his condition. And do you know what he did? He looked up his disease in a medical dictionary. That's when I knew she was telling the truth. Freak in his dictionary. Kevin knew from a very young age that he was not going to live long, she says. He knew it was just a matter of time. So he was lying about getting a robot body? Dr. Spivak shakes her head. I don't think it was a lie, Maxwell. Do you? I think he needed something to hope for, and so he invented this rather remarkable fantasy you describe. Everybody needs something to hope for. Don't call it a lie. Kevin was not a liar. No, I say, but what happened to him really? I could tell you all the medical terminology, she says, but what really happened is his heart got too big for his body. There was talk about arresting me for busting up the hospital, but the cop with the nightstick was in favor. But finally, they released me into the custody of Grim. On the way home, he goes, "Do you want to talk about it?" "Just leave me alone," I say. "You got it," he says. Chapter 25, What Loretta Says. That was 1 year ago. I hid in the Down Under for days and days. I kept the door closed, which is why I missed the funeral and the fair Gwen going away. Graham told me about it afterward and how she couldn't stand to live in a house with Kevin gone, and who could blame her. Grim threatened to unscrew my bedroom door, but he never did. He just kept saying I should come out for Graham's sake, and sometimes she'd come down and say I should come out for Grim's sake, and so on and so forth until I finally gave up and came out. I don't know if this makes sense, but for a long time, I felt like I was a balloon and somebody had let the air out of me. I didn't care if I ever got the air back, because what does it really matter if we're all going to die in the end? That's how I was feeling. That's how down I was feeling, and sorry for myself. Grim tried to tell me that it isn't how long you've got that matters. It's what you do with the time you have. But that sounded so lame and puny next to Freak dying that I didn't want to hear it. This one day, just before school was supposed to start, I was moping around the backyard and thinking about how pointless and stupid everything was. Grim comes over and he says, "You know what? Most of us go all the way through life and we never have a friend like Kevin. So maybe you should count yourself lucky." "Yeah, right," I say. "Suit yourself," he says, "but let's get one thing straight. You are going back to school. If I have to hitch a rope to the bumper and drag you to school myself, you're going. Is that clear?" So I went to school and I hated every minute of it. I especially hated how people kept feeling sorry for me, as if I was the one who had died. Finally, one time, even Tony D came up to me and said it was a shame what had happened. And I could see that he really meant it, but I just blew up and told him that if he ever felt sorry for me again, I'd put him head first in the mill pond and pound him into the mud like a fence post. So we're enemies again, which is just the way I like it. Not too long after that, this was winter by then, I saw Loretta Lee in the street. She still had a neck brace on, and you could smell booze on her breath. What did you expect? A miracle just because she lost her head and acted good for a couple of minutes? Anyhow, Loretta sees me and she says, "Did you hear about Gwen? She's in California and she's got a new boyfriend. His name is Rick and they're crazy about each other. Ain't that good news?" "I guess so." "Take it from me," she says. "It is. So what are you doing these days?" "Nothing." She gives me this long look and she goes, "Nothing is a drag, kid. Think about it." I thought about it all the way home. That night, I pulled the pyramid box from under the bed and got the empty book out of the pyramid, and I'm thinking, who are you kidding, Maxwell Kane? You haven't got a brain. And that's the truth, the whole truth, the unvanquished truth, is how Freak would say it. So I wrote the unvanquished truth stuff down, and then I just kept going for months and months until it was spring again, and the world was really and truly green all over. By the time we got here, I guess it should be the end. I'm feeling okay about remembering things. And now that I've written a book, who knows? I might even read one. It's no big deal. We're done. We read it. We read the whole book. Thank you guys for being patient with me. I know I didn't get that up as soon as I would, or as quickly as I would have liked to. So thank you for your patience and your understanding. I hope that you're going to get outside today because it's beautiful. Take your computer or your whatever you're using, take it outside. It's so nice. It's a gorgeous day. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll post your assignment later on today. It'll just be a couple of questions about those chapters. And then tomorrow we'll start something new. I can't wait to see you guys.